My name is Lisa Conte. I'm the one with the DJ hair here, and I'm the founder, president, and CEO of Jaguar Health. We do have a wholly owned subsidiary in the United States called Napo Pharmaceuticals, so I may use the words Jaguar and Napo interchangeably. And here's our forward-looking statements. You've seen things like this before, so do some speed reading, and then let's get right into it here. What we do is all our drug discovery from plants that are used traditionally in tropical areas. So leveraging the knowledge of healers, shamans, and rainforests to do more efficient drug discovery and development. And we did take a product all the way from a tree growing in the rainforest to a first-in-class, meaning a totally new mechanism of action, a totally new way of medicinally treating and even curing diseases, and it's focused on gastrointestinal diseases. And the product is called crofelemer. That's the active pharmaceutical ingredient, and the brand name is Mytesi. And it is a natural product. It's plant-based. It's organic. It's sustainably harvested. It's fair trade. And it is an FDA-approved drug. And it's the only oral drug approved by the FDA under botanical guidance, which confers an exclusivity advantage. There's no pathway for a generic. So we file all the patents. We have all the expenses associated with a global patent portfolio, but we essentially have exclusivity forever. So Mytesi is approved first for a specialty indication in HIV-related diarrhea. Another word for specialty is relatively small. This will never be bigger than a $50, $60, $70 million market opportunity. It was requested by the FDA. It was fast-tracked by the FDA for the HIV patient population, which is very important. But what's very important for the business is that crofelemer is a pipeline within a product. And we have multiple follow-on indications that are blockbuster in terms of the number of patients that can benefit, the fact that there are no alternative treatments, and therefore the return opportunity for shareholders and all the stakeholders. We can't do everything, so we've prioritized 3 programs that move the product along the value chain from being something that is looked at as symptomatic relief, diarrhea, symptom supportive care, to having an impact on disease outcome and disease management intervention where there's greater reimbursement opportunity. So we're in the midst of a final phase 3 clinical trial for cancer therapy related diarrhea. We're doing a proof of concept study for a short bowel syndrome rare disease business. I'm sorry, for an orphan drug designation and a rare disease business for short bowel syndrome. And we are doing that in Europe, at a European subsidiary that we established, because there is greater efficiency and opportunity to get revenue generating expanded early patient access for orphan drug designation in Europe faster than you can get in the United States. So targeting revenue as early as 2023, which is a pre-approval program in Europe. And then we have a cholera indication for, it's actually a 2nd generation anti-secretory that comes from the same plant under the financial incentive of a tropical disease priority review voucher program from the FDA. So to put those in perspective, cancer therapy related diarrhea is not your garden variety. You had a food poisoning. This is grade 3, will put you in the hospital for IV. There are actually patients who died in clinical trials from the dehydration and the organ shutdown from the diarrhea associated with their cancer therapy. Chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, which is another symptomatic relief indication, is about a $3 billion market. You take those products for typically the first 3 days in a chemo cycle, whereas with targeted therapy, you're on these agents chronically. The insult is occurring to your gut every single day, and so you're dealing with diarrhea for a year, for 2 or 3. And if you don't manage the diarrhea about 40 to 60% of the time, patients go off their life-saving therapy or they go to a sub-therapeutic dose because they can't manage the dehydration. So hugely important, untapped, unmet medical need. Short bowel syndrome, this is quite interesting. It's a small population, orphan indication, about 40 to 60,000 patients around the world. It is projected to be a $5 billion market by 2027, and that doesn't even include, at the time that third-party research was done, it didn't include the opportunity for a novel mechanism coming in from crofelemer. So the great value in this company is that the depth of the enterprise value, and you're talking about this, the small cap, so that the depth of it is the multiple shots on goal, the depth of this product pipeline, and a late-stage product pipeline. What we achieved at the end of last year was important. It all occurred in December. Phase 2 data, prophylaxis data for cancer therapy-related diarrhea by a third-party investigator was completed and presented at the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium. And that full manuscript is being submitted just in the next couple of weeks for publication. And the endpoints that were received, the collection of endpoints in that study mapped to the primary endpoint in our ongoing phase 3 pivotal trial. We also received orphan drug designation for the European indication for crofelemer for short bowel syndrome. That was a critical go, no go for that whole business model, the orphan rare disease business model in Europe. And what we are in the midst of right now is we did achieve approval for our second product, which is our first prescription veterinary product, crofelemer for chemotherapy-induced diarrhea in dogs. That product is called Canalevia, and it is literally in the midst of being launched this week. We just had our first purchase orders, the first delivery of the product to a distributor. There's a conference in Florida, believe it or not, is actually still going to go on this weekend, where we're having our first educational session. So it's very exciting having that product out there, because dogs often take human chemotherapeutic agents and they have the same reaction. 40 to 60% of the time, they have to go off their chemotherapy because of diarrhea. So it gives an opportunity for us to educate, promote about the problem of diarrhea in cancer patients. In this case, the patient is an animal, but it's very predictive of the human situation. So what's going to happen this year is 2022, we will complete enrollment for the phase 3 human trial. This is the pivotal trial to expand the indication for Mytesi. So it's the exact same product, the exact same dosing. It's literally expanding the label and the opportunity to promote for that indication. We will complete a proof of concept for short bowel syndrome. This is being run by the European subsidiary, and that allows us to support expanded early access patient program in Europe, which is revenue generating in 2023. And we do have global unencumbered rights to crofelemer. So we do have business development activities going on and expect to have licenses in other territories announced probably in the first half of 2022. Throughout this year, it's the year of Canalevia. So, you know, in pharmaceuticals, you go into a clinical trial, sometimes you don't have something to say for the next 12 to 18 months when the trial is going on. But when you're launching a product, there's a lot to say. And particularly since, in addition to the education, the promotion to the vet who has to write the prescription, obviously the dog owner is absolutely critical to the decision to get a prescription and to treat the dog and to treat the cancer as well as the diarrhea. So there will be a lot of PR activities that are focused on education and awareness building in the dog owner community. And for a stock like ours, which is very strongly retail held, there is a lot of crossover with the investor relation benefit of that type of activity as well. So for example, there's no registry, believe it or not, there's no registry for dog cancer in the United States. There is in Europe. So what is the demographics? Where geographically are you seeing cancers? What types of dogs? What types of cancers? We will be taking a leadership role on that and putting out a lot of PR about that activity, in addition to all the veterinary direct promotion as well. So to just give you some idea, we don't put out guidance, but to give you some idea of how big this market can be. Pandemic, there's about 100 million dogs now in the United States. It went up about 10% during the pandemic. Believe it or not, 25% of them are going to have a tumor, over 50% of them over the age of 10. And, you know, pet owners are having a greater and greater willingness to spend money to extend the life of their dog. The key thing is with comfort. And you hear that all the time, regardless of whether it's cancer or congestive heart failure or an autoimmune disease. You can't talk to the dog and say, just, you know, suck it up for this treatment, you'll be better at the end of it. So the patient comfort is very, very important, and not having diarrhea and not losing control is a key aspect of that. And it's very important for the whole quality of life as a family as well. You certainly don't want a dog that's lost control on your rug or your couch or your bed. That's not going to work for anyone. What's also very interesting from the financial perspective as we go into the veterinary marketplace, on the human side, we never know how many chargebacks we're going to get between the gross and net, because patients may have lost their job, they lose their private insurance, they go on Medicaid, there's insurance of last resort for HIV patients, whereas the animal market is pay out of your pocket. Even those who have insurance, they're paying out of their pocket and getting reimbursed. So we have much greater predictability between our gross and our net. And so we feel that the Canalevia market can be as important to us as the Mytesi HIV market. And it fills in a nice revenue base while we're waiting to get these big indications approved for cancer, for short bowel syndrome, for Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, et cetera. Overall, the strategy of the company is very focused on risk mitigation. Our approval is a chronic approval. So we have chronic safety, for example, 2-year carcinogenicity. We have a full supply chain in place. We take a product from a tree growing in the rainforest to a bottle you can find in essentially any pharmacy in the United States. Safety and manufacturing are the 2 most common reasons why new drug applications fail. So as much risk mitigation as we can do as possible in pharmaceutical development, we meet with the FDA, we get agreement on that trial design, enrollment criteria, endpoint definitions. So it's simply a matter, not simply, but it's a matter of running that last pivotal trial and getting that last piece of efficacy information to then expand the promotional opportunity for a product that's already approved. We run our programs as best as we can with non-dilutive dollars. So for example, we have a royalty deal on the sales of Mytesi into the HIV market, and those funds are devoted and targeted to the cancer therapy related trial. And then additional non-dilutive dollars will come in as we do business development deals. For example, with our European subsidiary, we have an exclusive license to that European subsidiary, which is called Napo Therapeutics. That license comes with typical license terms: an upfront fee, milestone payments, royalties, transfer pricing of the drug, and all the data that is generated is available to Jaguar to utilize in the United States. That European subsidiary was funded by merging with a European SPAC, which occurred in December of 2021. So how does this product have so many patient populations that it can benefit? What's important is what it does do and what it doesn't do. What it does do is it normalizes abnormal ion flow in the gut that is a result of an insult to the inside of the gut from a chemotherapy agent. It can be from the HIV virus itself intercalating into the lining of the gut. It can be a toxin from an infectious agent. It can be physical inflammation. But whatever it is, the common last step, sort of the holy grail in drug development, is the active secretion of excess chloride ions into the gut. That's essentially salt. Water comes in and then the watery diarrhea goes out. And so what crofelemer does is it works from the inside locally to normalize that ion flow. If you and I are normal and you swallow a whole bottle of Mytesi, nothing happens. It only normalizes the abnormal flow, which normalizes the water flow, the transit time, and specifically mitigates the dehydration. What it does not do is it's not an opioid. So Imodium and loperamide that you think of, OTCs, these are opioids, and they work by the mechanism of constipation, and you can't stay constipated chronically. So, you know, these are contraindicated and complicated patient populations. They also, you know, they make you a little loopy. They have addictive risk associated with them. We're not an antibiotic, so we don't have resistance liability. We are not systemically absorbed. So there's no drug-drug interaction. Again, very important in complicated patients, cancer patients, Crohn's disease patients. We have no first pass effect, no second generation metabolites causing problems later on. So in thousands of patients treated, in dozens of published clinical trials, we've never seen a profile different than placebo. Safety is a huge, huge hallmark of this product. So just to, in the interest of time, cancer, again, the most common side effect of cancer therapy is diarrhea. And these were the 3 publications that came out by third parties at ASCO, the big cancer conference, which was in June last year, that about 40% of the patients go off their chemotherapy It costs about 3 times as much to take care of a cancer patient with diarrhea as a matched patient without. And that again is getting to the severity of the dehydration. Where does that cost come from? Putting the patient in the hospital, getting them on IVs, dealing with additional complications that come as their organs start to go into a shutdown mode. So we are in the midst of the phase 3 trial. It is literally the dose that we have now. So 1 dose of Mytesi. It's BID, twice a day, 125 mg tablet to placebo, be a total of 256 patients. We negotiated with the FDA for almost 18 months before we started this clinical trial, as I said, to wring as much risk as possible out of the implementation of this development program and out of the implementation or the execution of the company as well. Short bowel syndrome, talk about this moves further along the value chain. So with cancer therapy, by keeping a patient on their chemo agent, you're affecting the outcome of their cancer therapy. In short bowel syndrome, normal bowel is about 20 to 25 feet. Short bowel syndrome will be 5 feet or less. It could be as short as 30 centimeters. This could be due to a congenital defect, an accident, cancer, some sort of inflammation where there has to be a surgical resection. What happens to these patients is intestinal failure, and they end up on parenteral nutrition where 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. So they're just hooked up to tubes, and that's how they get their nutrients of life, their proteins, their fats, their carbohydrates, their minerals, their vitamins. And parenteral nutrition is never matched very well to what really occurs in life. So they have a great deal of complications, high mortality, high morbidity. There was a study recently in patients, adults who had surgical resection. In 2 years, 17% of them hadn't survived. In 5 years, 40% hadn't survived. All sorts of complications, very expensive to take care of. Usually $500,000 to $1 million a year to take care of these patients without the complications. What happens is they may progress onto a growth hormone treatment called Gattex, which is commercialized in the United States by Takeda, only used in less than 2-3% of the patients, quite a toxic agent, doesn't really work very well. Nevertheless, reimbursed at $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year, or they may have to go to transplant or reconstruction. So really, really catastrophic events. What we're looking to do is intervene before any of these therapies. And the endpoint that the FDA has signed off on is a reduction of parenteral nutrition, even 15 to 20% reduction. 20% is like a day off. So the patient can go to school, can have some sort of quality of life. If you do so little for these patients, they're so appreciative because their life is just so bad. And so it's not a diarrhea endpoint. You are definitely forming, providing formed stools and affecting the diarrhea. But the key intervention here is to decrease the secretions into this very, very short gut and give the patient a little bit of time to do their own absorption of the nutrients of life, which is so much superior to having parenteral nutrition and all the morbidity associated with that.
Hey, Lisa, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Yeah. So just quick, so obviously, I think the data is something like 1/3 of all women will experience cancer in their lives and 50% of men will experience it. So just from a human trials point of view, I have a family member, my father-in-law has been going through cancer treatment for 3 years. And so he was, finally after, they cut whatever they could, they got him onto some, experimental CAR T therapy. But as you just brought up, he started having diarrhea and bleeding, and so they canceled the experimental treatment for him. Any thoughts on when this kind of a treatment that you're doing will be available for humans, or how to get into the experimental trials?
Here's the interesting thing. So Mytesi is available for humans and Canalevia for dogs. So it's in humans, it's not available, or it's not labeled. We can't promote for cancer right now. But HIV patients are an interesting microcosm because HIV patients get cancer, they get Crohn's disease, they get short bowel syndrome. And so within HIV, it has been prescribed for cancer therapy related diarrhea. So we have anecdotal data. Any physician who became aware of the data could prescribe it and could fight with the insurance company for reimbursement. The approval likely won't happen until 2023 because we'll complete enrollment for the cancer indication. We'll complete enrollment in 2022. It's a prophylaxis study. So patients have to have not yet started on their cancer therapy, or if they took a break for some reason and they're starting again and they have a solid tumor, they would qualify. And we can certainly let you know all the different sites where we're doing clinical trials. I think we have like 30 sites right now.
Do these treatments get accelerated, okay, from the all the different medical boards, or how does that work? I mean,
what do you mean accelerated?
It touches a lot of people.
Cancer, of course, touches a lot of people. When the trial is over and we have pivotal data and it's published, or even the phase 2 data when it is published, which will be submitted very, very shortly. Cancer is a field where there is a tradition of off-label utilization or expanded utilization, and insurance companies typically will reimburse. And remember, this is in the symptomatic relief category, so it's a little bit different than taking a cancer agent that's approved for breast cancer and utilizing it in lung cancer. But as I said, Mytesi is an approved drug. So any physician, we even have a publication, which I can send over because it's public information, of a patient who had classic TKI, chronic diarrhea with a solid tumor, and his life was made much better and extended somewhat by treatment with Mytesi because his physician took the effort to find out about the product, the mechanism, and fight with the insurance company for reimbursement. And
just more information about the company. Are you in the middle of raising capital? Are you issuing any debt? How is the company doing?
No, I've certainly heard from you guys. I am totally in the camp of trying not to take money that you have to pay back. So when you're not profitable yet, we are not in the midst of raising money. We're pretty well capitalized. The last reported cash was about $30 million. That'll get us through pretty close to a year, and we have additional dollars that will come in from some license agreements, and certainly not at this devastating stock price. You can bet, if my stock price goes back to where it was last year, which was over $10, I would certainly raise some money, but we're not raising money at the moment.
Great. Any closing remarks? We've got about 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you about why we are so undervalued, okay? And this is fair game. Here we go. We have about 50 million shares outstanding. And as I said, we were about $10 a share just a year ago. Now, everybody right in our sector is down 50 to 90%. But about 3 months ago, we got hit hard because I was out of authorized shares. I couldn't even provide any incentives to employees that I was hiring. We're always looking maybe for another product to put in our bag, that we would buy with equity. So I had to get some more shares. And since we're so retail held, I couldn't get the vote. So we did a 3-for-1 reverse split. So we now have about 47 million shares outstanding, but I have 150 million authorized. So I'm okay. We didn't do any offering. We didn't do any stupid structured thing. And we lost 50% of our value the day we did the reverse split, and another 50% for a 75% total over the next couple of weeks. But I, my CFO, and my largest shareholder all invested at about 3 times the price where we are now, restricted stocks, no warrants, to show our confidence in the future value and the depth of the value of the company. So that's my closing remark.
Well, fantastic and great job. It's very interesting. We're looking forward to hearing more from you in the next month that's coming up. It's going to be in New York as well, I think. Thanks so much.
Thank you.